This is probably my favorite fight on the whole card. The main event's good, but this one's really grown on me also in its own right. And it's Renato Moicano versus Drew Dober. And this is the theme of the card, man. Like, I'm waffling. It's very difficult to
Mhm.
predict these. It's difficult to kind of choose somebody and commit to them because we don't do like your other patty cake MMA channels. We give you a pick, we give you odds, we stand by it, win, lose, or draw. We don't back down, we don't make excuses. So everything we give you, we stand by 100%. We put our own money on, etc. And this one's tough for me because I've went back and forth so much because Renato Moicano does seem on paper like what you would think the better fighter is. Like his record's better. He seems more polished in his striking. Seems like he has the grappling advantage, things of that nature. Drew Dober, I talk about these individuals in MMA all the time. We know what they're like. We've seen it. They've been around for a while. Can you teach an old dog new tricks type thing? That's kind of what Drew Dober is. He's another one of those guys where he has surprised me, though. Most of these guys and girls in MMA that I tell you, can you teach an old dog new tricks? Are they going to show a new facet to the game? They haven't been able to, and there's a reason for it. Drew Dober, I'll give some credit to. He has, like, I didn't expect him, for example, to beat Terrence McKinney. When he beat Terrence McKinney, that showcased a lot of grit, a lot of determination. It was a comeback win. McKinney was on his way to finishing him, and then Drew Dober was able to turn around and get his own finish, and that's kind of started to skid for McKinney. So that was pretty impressive that Drew Dober was able to do that, and he was able to kind of put a damper on the fire of Bobby Green that he had going there for a little while by KO and Bobby Green. But what concerns me is the story of Drew Dober, which is he does things like that. He'll break Bobby Green's hot streak. He'll, break Terrence McKinney when he should have been broken himself. He'll beat Alex Hernandez by punches. He'll KO Nasrat Hakparast, who was a guy I was really high on in that division, who I thought might be the next big thing. But then he'll lose to Matt Frivola. No offense to Matt Frivola, but it's Matt Frivola. Like, you don't lose to Matt Frivola, especially getting finished in the first round by a TKO. And I know it probably wasn't an early stoppage because it was Herb Dean officiating, and Herb Dean will let you die before he stops the fight. The man's thinking about what, poontang he's going to come home to that night. He ain't worried about the fight anymore. He's got his check. He's done. So that's what concerns me about Drew Dober is for all these glimpses we see from him and his long career, because the man's 27-12. He's been in MMA for a long time. A lot of miles come with that. He's even been in the UFC for a long time. He's been in the UFC since 2013. And I like to think that that wasn't that far away anymore, but it's been a little bit of time, especially to be in MMA, and that's not his professional career as a whole. That's just UFC time alone that he's been in the game with all these fights, all this damage, all these miles. And while we talk about, hey, it gives you an advantage as the vet edge, the experience edge, the ring time, et cetera, that does all help. I like that Moicano has like the fresh legs. He's 17-5, one no contest. I believe he's the younger guy. Drew Dober doesn't seem like
But
he's that. Oh, it's
he's
only
there
by
about
a
a year.
year. Yeah, it's not drastic, but he doesn't have the miles. He hasn't been in as many wars. Like the biggest war he's had that I can think of off the top of my head, which is what makes me concerned about him, was he did have a war with RDA. I am concerned that in 2022 it was a great fight. It was an amazing fight I watched live and it was exciting. But for RDA in 2022 to take you to that much of a dogfight as what should be the younger, fresher, better fighter concerns me. I do like how he choked out Brad Riddell in the first round. Brad Riddell, another story of a guy with a lot of promise, a lot of hype, a lot of potential, didn't live up to it. Unfortunately, might even be retired from the sport with how bad his career has kind of taken a toll in the negative way. But it's tough. It's tough. Moicano versus Dober is one of the hardest fights I feel on a card just full of hard to predict fights. But I'm also thinking about Chan Sung Jung, the Korean Zombie, viciously KO'd in 2019 Renato Moicano in the first round. And I get 2019 was a while ago. People can change, they can get better, they can adapt. But MMA is a brutal sport. It's a brutal sport. In 2019, yeah, it's been a few years, but it's not that long ago. And the Korean zombie should not have taken such a drastic nosedive in his career like he did since 2019 with that finish. So it's kind of got me a little concerned once again for all the good Morcano does that he was able to get taken out that quick, that fast by a guy who I thought was back, I thought was in his prime, and then just took a nosedive in Korean Zombie. So, with the way the odds are on this fight, it just adds to how difficult it is because you got Moicano at a minus 185, Dober at a plus 154, Moicano by KO TKO is a plus 700, by decision for Moicano is a plus 4. If you go Dober by KO TKO, it's plus 225. If you go Dober by sub, plus 2200. And if you go by Dober decision, plus 900. I don't think it's going to be sub. I think both guys are going to stand and bang. If it does get into the grappling department, I think Moicano kind of has a pretty decided edge there with his Brazilian jiu-jitsu advantage. And he does have, at least a few finishes from like rear naked choke on his resume in the UFC, which really helps. Like he finished Damir Hadzovic by rear naked choke so first that he actually got pissed off and then he confronted Damir about it, and Damir just said, "Well, you shouldn't have finished me that fast if you wanted to fight." It was kind of hilarious, the interaction. So Morcano definitely has the BJJ grappling edge. I just don't think it's going to come to that. It's going to be a war, so it's either going to be decision or KO TKO. Dober can be finished, but he does have a good chin. It does seem like it is hard to finish him, as Terrence McKinney found out. He can easily, just when you think you've got him up against the cage, about to be done, the fight's called, he turns it around and it's like, call an ambulance, but not for me. It's tough. It's a very tough fight, but what it comes down to for me is Moicano, I feel like, is the better fighter on paper, does have the better record, and has the most potential to. We haven't seen everything with him yet. Going back to what I started off this conversation with, I feel like we've seen what Drew Dober has to offer. And unfortunately, with as long as he's been in, as many fights as he's had in his career and in the UFC, I think this is where he's at. This is his career. This is what it is. So I like Moicano. It's going to be 15 minutes. It's going to be 3 rounds. Uh, you know, since they've both been in some wars, I'm going to try not to get too giddy with the finishes because that hasn't worked out for me lately when I've done that. I'm going to take decision because both guys are hard to finish. No pun intended, even though we had a guy do softcore earlier. Let's go plus 400 Moicano by decision. What are you thinking, Ben?
You were saying about how he probably leads in a bunch of stats. Well, everybody that's seen the screen knows he's leading in all stats for Dober. Renato Moicano, he's an impressive dude. Good jab kick combo. He's not just reliant solely on his fists. Wants to stay standing. He will do the takedown and he will use his BJJ. But like you were saying, I think they're gonna stand and bang too. Not as much as McKenna and Balbita. This was almost my knuck if you buck fight, but I just think that both guys have might take some more shots and takedowns in this fight. Trying to get away from getting punched in the face for a little bit. Once somebody's on the ground, he just goes straight for that rear naked choke. Like that is all Moicano looks for. He's good at it. And he's had a long layoff is what concerns me. His last fight was November of 2022. So you were saying he's got fresh legs. He's got very fresh legs. Drew Dober, quick hands, very quick hands. He could take abuse in that TKO when he got finished. It's definitely, you can argue if it was an early stoppage or not, because he hopped up and he looked fine. He wasn't wobbling a ton, I thought. But at the same time, if they don't call it, does he still get finished? Probably. He was just taking so much punishment. He was already bleeding heavy. but he's got serious KO power himself. Went to the third with Makhachev, which I was pretty impressed with. Drew Dober, also most KOs in lightweight history.
Yeah, dude's been around a while.
He has. Renato's just got so much stuff going on too. Like, shout out Taylor Swift and Travis Kelce, right? Just you have more distractions. Renato, he's got his podcast. He does a lot of stuff. I don't know. He's definitely the more famous guy right now. I think Renato is. And Drew Dober, he used to be super famous because, yes, he was the Giga Chad guy. He just shaved his beard. I'm going to take
Dude's got a hell of a jawline.
A hell of a jawline, dude. I'm going to take Drew Dober by decision at plus 900.
I don't hate it. This is a tough fight, man.
Very tough.
Another waffler, so I don't hate it at all. I don't blame you. It's tough, but once again, one guy's gonna win, one guy's gonna lose. It's not to be a philosophical like Nate Diaz. I know it's a common sense thing to say, but yeah, it's tough, man.
Yeah,
very tough.
You better start listening to the Better in Green podcast. You will not regret it. Trust me. And hey, I'm Dean Blandino.
Welcome to Better in Green, eh? To Better in Green, eh? To Better in Green, eh? Listen in and cash out. That's what it's all about. Come on, let's make cash now. We always on spot and we cover all spots from the bottom to the top. Hey, shout out to Ethan, shout out to Wyatt, shout out to Ben. Welcome to our podcast, Better in Green.